South Africa's unemployment rate rose to 33.2% in quarter two of 2025, with 140,000 more people out of work. Stats SA's latest quarterly labor survey shows a labor force of 25.2 million from a working age population of 41.8 million. Only 4 of 10 industries created or retained jobs during the period, with black women and youth remaining the most vulnerable in the labor market. I'm now joined by Free SA's Reuben Coetzer, who's going to be joining us about this discussion. Reuben, thank you so much for your time and for being with us this morning. So we are seeing those very alarming numbers. I mean, given that approximately 25 million South Africans are unemployed, how do you as Free SA assess just some of those root causes as we continue to grapple with unemployment rates in this country?
Good morning, Katlego. Thank you so much for having me on this Sunday morning. Yes, I think it's vitally concerning. I think we've seen that despite the fact that the economy has grown by 0.3%, unemployment still increases, which really shows that that number is not really a sufficient number of growth for South Africans. It doesn't even match the population growth. And I think it's just a sign. I think when the government of national unity came into power, there was quite a lot of optimism that the economy would grow and there would be jobs created and there would really be massive improvement in what's happening in our country. And I think we just see a lot of the same policies. I think what's clear for us as Free SA is that the environment that's being created by the government, the policies that's being pursued, which are really a lot of strict regulatory policies, high compliance costs, and anti-growth policies, it really is anti-business. And I think we've seen that the anti-business, the anti-private sector growth, and the excessive red tape by government as it relates to labor laws and policy uncertainty as well, really undermines the private sector and the private sector's ability to create jobs. Because I think if we don't create the environment where the private sector can flourish and can create jobs, then at the end of the day, we're going to be stuck in this position. And as you mentioned at the start, it's really the young people and the women, especially our black women, which feels it the most personally. And I think we must remember the 25 million South Africans that you're speaking of. It's a personal situation for many South Africans, and I think the stats don't always emphasize the personal situation that many South Africans are facing. And for us as Free SA, this is really a call to chart a different course, because the course that we've been pursuing is not working. We need rampant exponential economic growth if we are to tackle this problem. And with the current policies that we are pursuing, that's just not the case.
Maybe just unpack some of those policies that you say are anti-business, that are really at the fore of us being unable to decrease these unemployment numbers. What stands out particularly for you?
So there's quite a number of things that we can look at. I think just some small and simple steps that can already make a major change. I don't think it's a silver bullet necessarily, but it's definitely something that can already make major changes and at least ensure that we chart the right path going forward. And some of those would be to remove the regulations that prevent small and medium enterprises from growing and starting small and medium enterprises in the first place, because it's really difficult if you look at the regulations that you need to start a small business with, and difficult to get it off the ground. And we really need to make it easy and business friendly for small and medium enterprises. And secondly is the policy uncertainty as well. For both local and foreign investors, it's really difficult to invest in a country and invest in sectors if there's so much uncertainty about what is next, and what the actual policy of the government is, because I don't think it's clear for many people. Then also reforming the restrictive labor laws to encourage businesses to hire, because if businesses have the opportunity to expand, there's more capital, there's more people investing in their business, then they can easily expand and easily get people who they can hire as well. And then finally, our government should improve infrastructure and services to support businesses. I think one of the main misconceptions that is made is that government should be the central authority of job creation and hiring, and that's not the case. Government should create the environment, it should create the opportunities for businesses to then be the drivers of employment and the drivers of growth. I think if you look at the Western Cape as an example, it's a very good example. Again, it's not a silver bullet, but I think it shows what can be done when there's an environment where businesses are allowed to be the drivers of growth. We see that in the second quarter, the Western Cape has added 69,000 jobs at 2.6% economic growth for the economy as well, which is significantly better than what we're seeing on a national level. And again, it's not a silver bullet, but I think it shows that where government is the platform and is the enabler of businesses, there really is an opportunity for growth rather than government aiming to be the centralized employer and the centralized driver of growth.
And you're quite correct. I mean, it is the responsibility of government to create that conducive environment in order for businesses to be able to create jobs. But many within the unions argue that even when government is creating that conducive environment, we find that the private sector would be bringing in a lot of retrenchments, especially in the automotive industry. How do we then find that balance between private and public?
Yeah, that's a very important question. I think when businesses grow and they have extensive capital to spend, then it ensures that there is growth regardless of what happens. I think if you look at it from a practical standpoint, when businesses saves money on costs and taxes and the regulations by government is scaled back, then there's more money for businesses to spend. And that might not necessarily be in their business itself, employing people, but it is in developing their business, in developing their infrastructure, in expanding. And if they then expand and they develop their infrastructure in their business and they pursue other industries, diversification, etc., then it creates jobs in other sectors as well. So I think we need to look at it from a holistic standpoint and not necessarily at the business itself. And I think, again, we have to look at it at sectors as a whole, not just as a singular business. In some instances, there might be businesses who do that, but as a collective, we then see that it allows them the opportunity to expand and also create employment in other sectors. I think what we as Free SA is saying is not that government should not provide an oversight role. I think that's also important, but the oversight shouldn't be to an extent that it's stifling and strangling the very existence and the very being of the private sector. And I think that's where we need to find the balance, because I think at the moment there's definitely the scale is quite imbalanced in the favor of government trying to do everything and really not achieving anything, rather than balancing the scales, allowing the private sector to flourish and to grow and to expand, and do what they do best, which is chase profit and expand growth and drive employment. And then the government can come in and play the necessary oversight role. But I don't think if the platform is not even being created in the first place, then you can't really expect the oversight role to follow. The platform must first be created, the environment must first be created, and then secondly, the oversight can follow.
How can reforms in education, skills development, I mean, you spoke about labor laws, how can they contribute towards reducing unemployment?
So in South Africa, we have a very skill-specific market. We really have a dire need of skills in South Africa. And I think when you're speaking about education, it's not necessarily university degrees or college degrees. It really is practical, technical skills. And I think that is something that the government can definitely look at, is investing in scarce skills that our labor market especially needs, by looking at a needs analysis of what exactly it is that businesses need. That's a really, really important thing to invest in, because like I mentioned, our economy is predominantly a skills-driven economy, and really focusing on equipping South Africans, especially young South Africans, with skills to drive employment and drive entrepreneurship. Because I think we really have a culture of entrepreneurship in South Africa, but that is one of the aspects where we really don't look after our people. And I think really ensuring that we have the necessary skills training, rather than your university and your college degrees, which are very expensive, but ensuring that we offer practical skills to South Africa that's suited to the labor market. Because I think the labor market is also ever changing in the fourth industrial revolution with the development of AI, and ensuring that we are ahead of the curve and have modern and practical skills training for all South Africans, especially for our young people who, when we look at the current statistics, we see that more than 50% of young people are unemployed. And that's because they're not equipped for the economy and the modern economy and the needs of the modern economy. And that's definitely something that should be looked at as well, and that should be prioritized, because it's not really happening at this current moment in time.
And any economic sectors that Free SA sees as the most promising for that job creation, and how can these sectors be prioritized in terms of when we speak about entrepreneurship and small businesses? You spoke on the regulations and even just starting a small business. How can we introduce these kind of strategies to reduce unemployment?
Yeah, again, I think it comes down to the environment and the policy certainty that we create. If businesses and small and medium enterprises know that when they start their business, they will be supported by government and there won't be interference by government, they'll be allowed the platform to pursue job creation and to pursue growing their business with the support of government and not being stifled by taxes and regulations that are really overbearing, especially if it's small and medium enterprises that are being started. That is really something which can be quite optimistic. I think in terms of sectors, there's if you really look at the South African sectors of the economy, there's a lot of sectors where growth is really required. I think one of the few shining lights is the agriculture sector. But if it comes to job creation, I think there's really a lot of opportunities for South Africans in all sectors, especially in the manufacturing industry as well. And I think for South Africans, just using that gap in the market and ensuring that the platform is there from government side. Like I mentioned, the Western Cape has been quite effective at doing this, at creating this environment and creating this platform. And I think it's something that government really should pursue, because the path that we are on is not sustainable. We are on a path where we're heading off a cliff, and I think now is really the time to chart a different course. Because if we don't do it now, I think many South Africans will still suffer. And again, like I mentioned at the start, it's personal for many South Africans, and therefore, when we look at the numbers, we should also always bear that personal effect and that personal hardship in mind that touches all South Africans on a daily basis.
How do you think South Africa's unemployment crisis just compares to other regions and global trends? And what do you think we could learn from some of these trends?
Well, I think if we look at countries who have pursued a more pro-business, a more pro-private sector, a more free market economy environment, especially countries like South Korea and Singapore, which if you look at their population and you look at the nature of the sectors that they are active in, is quite similar to South Africa, we definitely see that there is a different path to follow and that there is a track record of success. I think we also see the other side of the coin in countries like Venezuela, like Cuba, where the focus is on a centralized government authority controlling most of the sectors, having a say and having influence in most of the sectors. We see that those countries are plagued by unemployment, or plagued by rampant crime, and I think public unrest as well. And that's really, really clear, is that there's really two sides of the coin. We can continue to pursue this path that we are currently on, in terms of really focusing on the government being the driver of employment and centralized control. But then we see what the effects of it are in countries like Cuba and Venezuela. But equally, on the other side of the coin, we do see that in South Korea and Singapore, when it is prioritized, there is an improvement, and there is an improvement in infrastructure. And when infrastructure improves, it's better for businesses as well, and then we can focus on things like education and things like that. So I think the model is definitely there, and there is definitely a clear example that when we do pursue this path of pro-business and pro-job creation, that we really can chart a way forward in our country. And I think we should really learn those lessons, because I think those lessons have always been there. But as South Africa and as the government of our country, there has been a stubbornness to pursue these sort of policies, because then you lose control, and you have to then sort of have faith and have trust in the private sector as well. But I think we've seen that it works, and that again doesn't mean that there shouldn't be an oversight role from government as well. That is still vitally important. We must just ensure that the oversight doesn't stifle the creation and doesn't stifle the innovation in the first place.
All right. Reuben Coetzer, Free SA spokesperson, thank you so much for your time. Certainly very alarming numbers. 25 million South Africans that are actively looking for work are without jobs. Thank you for your time.